Thank you, Rosie, for that. We've heard a little bit about the Living Lab all through the previous talks, and now it's time to see a little bit more in details about the design and how it actually became a reality within the Living Lab. So basically, the Living Lab has been, as Rosie mentioned, and Sam, the backdrop for showing the communities and the stakeholders what we can do with nature-based solutions. So we focused on making sure that we have an experimental background, as well as communicate the technologies that we've developed to different stakeholders. So we focused on three main aspects, the first of which was the aspect taken through by the university, which is the experimental NBS designs, making sure that we have an integrated system, and I'm going to mention that in a bit in details, and making sure as well that we have research and evidence to support that. So we're making sure that this Living Lab, which is a very bespoke design to the context as a retrofit solution, also speaks to the data and also speaks to the research. It can be taken forward to other sites within Greater Manchester, and hence working with the other parts of the project and feeding into that. And finally, working with showcasing what we have, making sure that we can develop an idea of how this works on ground as a living and existing facility. Yeah, so the design of the Living Lab itself is quite unique in the sense that it's a completely integrated system. And the idea here is that having an integrated system would make sure that the benefits and the savings are much more and higher than if we had a green roof on its own or a rain garden on its own. So making sure that all this is added within a retrofit urban environment was quite significant to prove the point and to test the technology. So we have an integrated system through underground solutions. So it's not just when you walk around campus, you don't really see this integration above ground, but all the integration is happening underground through the water attenuation. And a fact about this as well is that the footprint of the Living Lab is actually much less than the effect that we have on campus. So we're actually supporting the water attenuation and taking up water that was previously not used on campus for the whole university. So it's much greater than what we actually anticipated. The other thing, and what was very important about the Living Lab, was that it's completely retrofitted. Everything on campus is an addition to an existing building or an existing urban space. And you can see here that beforehand, the building was quite not very strong in terms of structure, and that's the same for the roof as well. But we could add very heavy and very technologically challenging green infrastructure on those existing buildings, and we had to make sure that we address each challenge separately. And this adds to the idea of making sure that it's a bespoke design, and it speaks to the context in which it is. Which brings us to the next learning from the Living Lab, which is actually the data, the research, and at the same time, making sure that we document all the lessons learned. So we are designing a bespoke Living Lab, a bespoke facility, but at the same time, we can mobilize those ideas, mobilize those learnings that have happened through starting the design, which was more of a co-design process, going through tendering, green infrastructure, and dealing with planning, dealing with different stakeholders that were involved, and going through the construction and making sure that we deliver on the innovation that we have set foot to design at the very beginning. So not losing this kind of sight for innovation, but at the same time delivering a real retrofit solution. And this is supported by the data, which we can see here. So for each of the different parts of the Living Lab, we have green walls, we have a green roof, we have suds trees, and we have a rain garden. And for each one of those, we can see and we can share the data through the integrated and comprehensive monitoring system there. And you can see it as a researcher, if you're a community member, if you're a stakeholder looking into utilizing these data into new designs, you can actually utilize this platform that we have with all the data live streamed for users. And last but not least, I wanted to mention that the Living Lab is actually just the start. So it is a starting point for experimentation. We do want to keep on going with the innovation, and the idea is that we know that the technology is changing, it's evolving all the time. So what we aim to do is to put a test bed in the heart of the city, in the heart of the university, and make sure that we can collaborate more with stakeholders, collaborate more with researchers. So beyond ignition, the Living Lab is expected to continue as a long-term test bed for innovation for green infrastructure. And the idea is to make sure that we identify the technologies and identify how we can go forward, but at the same time, we have to keep it alive as a source and a drive for innovation. And yeah, hopefully that's the end of this segment.